All right, we're here in the exhibit hall of USANZ 17. You can see it's a light crowd. That's because everyone's mostly back in session, right?
Absolutely.
It's the last day of USANZ 17. This is 2017, right?
It is 2017.
We're already talking about USANZ 18 this morning, right?
Yeah, no, it's,
So, Mark Frydenberg, you just finished a 2-year term as president. You're actually 1 day out of office, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you started off the meeting with your presidential address. Maybe give us some highlights, especially for folks who didn't get to go to the meeting, or maybe they're going to come next year.
No, well, I think the most important thing, and I talking to other sort of people in leadership positions in other countries, these issues actually seem to be fairly shared. It doesn't really matter, I think, whether you're in the United States or England or Europe, and just talking to them, it actually seems that a lot of these issues are actually quite common issues. And from my perspective, probably the main issue is just realising that our working environment has really changed. When we're practicing, I think in the past there was always this quiet self-regulation. As a clinician, we would be able to sort of, practice as we saw fit. We'd perhaps charge people as we saw fit. We would examine our own outcomes, but the reality is none of it was really widely examined by anybody other than ourselves. And I think that era has well and truly finished. And what became very clear during my 2-year term is that there are groups around Australia and New Zealand that are really very keen at looking at all of our outcomes. And that's not only, it goes all the way to our patterns of care, with regards to different urological procedures. It goes to costs, because it's not that easy it's quite easy actually now to track what patients are actually paying for their healthcare. And in addition, the outcomes, because at the end of the day, all governments and health funds and payers are pretty keen to make sure that they get good value out of their medical dollar, and obviously good outcomes with low complication rates are obviously good for them, is obviously good for the patients. And I think the intrinsic reaction to that by urologists is that of discomfort, because we haven't had people looking over our shoulders ever, and now all of a sudden we are. But I think this stuff isn't going to go away. We actually have to adapt to it, and in fact we've got to have a seat at the table to make sure the data is interpreted correctly. But I think for our credibility and as a profession, we have to welcome this, because if we're practicing good urology, we've got nothing to fear. Our management and our patterns of care will be appropriate, our charging will be ethical and appropriate, and our costs will be appropriate, and our outcomes should be good. So the reality is that I don't think this is a process to fear. I think it's definitely a process that we need to get very actively engaged in. But the intrinsic reaction is definitely one of discomfort and feeling like Big Brother's watching you. But I think unfortunately that's the reality of the world here in Australia in 2017, and I suspect, given the very high health costs in all developed countries in the world, it'll probably be the same everywhere.
That's good words. Thanks for that. We certainly have these issues in the U.S. as well, and all countries have their own approach to this. I mean, the BAUS meeting, look at the audits they're doing, where every surgeon has to turn in results. U.S. pretty much all the Medicare data is now open access.
Yeah, well, we're certainly planning to. We've already got a very robust prostate cancer registry, looking at patient outcome measures, and also we're beginning to sort of start a urologic surgery registry. But again, it's our attempt largely to really demonstrate that we're keen to examine our own outcomes. We want to take a leadership position in this space so that people realise that we're pretty committed to quality and safety for our patients. And the prostate cancer registry that's been going for 4 or 5 years is a great example of that now, because if we go back 5 years ago, the number of low-risk prostate cancer patients that were on surveillance was running at about 30 or 40%, and now it's at 80 or 90%. And sadly, there was about 30 or 40% of people with intermediate to high-risk prostate cancer that were getting no therapy. They were getting lost to a follow-up. That number's virtually zero now. And our PT2 surgical margin rates for radical prostatectomies has dropped precipitously since. So I think having that feedback for the clinicians has actually been invaluable because they've looked at their own results. It's been very non-threatening because it's confidential and it doesn't go out more widely other than to the clinician. But the clinician will say, well, hang on, my continence and potency rates actually aren't as good as what I thought they were. And it gives them an opportunity to improve, and they are all improving. So, I think that that's actually a very good process for the community, for urologists to go through.
Very good. Well, let's do 2 more quick impressions before we go. How about impressions of Canberra as a host city?
Yes, I think Canberra's a great host city. It's like a lot of national capital cities. It's very cultural. It's got a fantastic art gallery. Obviously, Parliament House is an iconic structure, as is Old Parliament House, the War Memorial, the National Museum. So, like a lot of other national capitals, it has a lot of educational, cultural things, and it's a very pleasant city. Beautiful lake in the middle of the city. Great to just go for a stroll or a ride around on the bike. So, I think overall, very pleasant, relaxed place to have a meeting, and hope it won't be too long until we're back here again.
Yeah, great night meetings. And then finally, did you have a favorite lecture or two?
Out of all of that, I must admit, I enjoyed a lot of the talks. I must admit, without wanting to sort of say it because you're standing there, but I actually really think that there's a huge future about genomics. So I really enjoyed the genomics talk. It's certainly an area that that you gave, John. I just think that it really does have a very significant role. Being a very keen active surveillance person, and my protocol that I started many years ago, did include small volume Gleason 3+4=7, and a lot of those patients have actually done remarkably well. And I really think this is where genomics can probably have a role, because I'm sure we're still over-treating a few Gleason 7 tumours, as well as under-treating a few Gleason 6 tumours. So I think, I think the answer probably will be with genomics to try and actually just work out and just better risk stratify which patients actually need treatment, don't need treatment, and responds to therapy. So I really enjoyed that talk. And the other one that I actually really enjoyed also doing kidney cancer work was actually by Stephen Bourgeon in last session.
I know the Mayo Clinic was going to come out.
No, absolutely. Well, I guess maybe this is my Mayo bias, having been
nothing to be ashamed of.
Having been a urologic oncology fellow there. But I must admit, again, it was really great work, and I think it actually just provided very good, clear insight with regards to things like in particular the cytoreductive nephrectomies, because I think for all of us that are involved in major renal urologic oncology, we're often faced with very difficult decisions, and sometimes actually proceeding on and doing a cytoreductive nephrectomy may not actually be in the patient's best interest, depending on the clinical features that patient's actually got at that particular point in time. And I in particular like Stephen's comment about using the systemic therapies as a litmus test. If you've got someone with a lot of poor features, you can't, my rule of thumb has always been, if I can do a complete resection, I do it. If I can't do a complete resection and I'm going to be leaving a lot of residual disease behind, a large volume, I really need to know what I'm leaving behind is actually going to respond to the systemic therapies. And I like his idea of using it as a litmus test, because in practice that's sort of generally what I do, is give a couple of cycles of systemic therapy and just see, does the node shrink, does the med shrink, or at least remain stable. And in that situation, it seems very reasonable to go on. But if they're progressing on systemic therapies with the kidney in place, they're probably going to progress with the kidney out too. And then you have to really think hard about whether it's worth doing. So I think if I could pick the two, that would probably be the two. Your talk on genomics and Stephen's talk on the cytoreductive and
just for the audience, in
kidney
case they know or don't know, then of course we had James Eastham. Some people, they call us the 3 M's, Mayo, MD, Memorial Sloan Kettering. So we're well represented here. And I enjoyed meeting Donna Hansel, a world-known pathologist I hadn't met before. I learned a lot from her talk. So the Internationals had a great experience, so thanks for your hospitality.
It's very welcome, and just encourage anyone to come along to our future meetings. I think most of the international guests sort of enjoy the local Australian and New Zealand hospitality, and it generally is a very relaxed, happy meeting, and so as well as great science, it's actually great friendships are made, and so hope to see more people down here in the future.
All right, nice job, thanks.